You know that moment when you discover your wife has been secretly photographing you at your worst moments? Well, I found out the hard way when I stumbled across a dating profile with my face on it. But here's the kicker. She wasn't trying to help me find love. She was trying to prove how pathetic and replaceable I was. It started on a regular Wednesday evening. I was checking my phone when my buddy sent me a screenshot with a message that made my blood freeze. Dude, isn't this you on this dating app? The profile showed 3 photos of me that I definitely didn't remember posing for. The first one was me passed out on our couch with my mouth wide open, drooling slightly, wearing nothing but old gym shorts. The second showed me sprawled on the same couch during a Sunday afternoon NFL game, shirtless, with a beer in one hand and the TV remote in the other, looking like I hadn't showered in days. The third was me trying to fix our garbage disposal, bent over awkwardly with my rear end prominently featured and my face showing pure frustration. The profile description read, "Average guy looking for someone who appreciates the simple things in life, enjoys relaxing at home and fixing things around the house." The whole thing screamed mediocrity and lazy husband stereotype. My first instinct was confusion, then anger, then, strangely, curiosity. Who would do this? And why? I sat there staring at these unflattering photos for about 10 minutes before it hit me like a freight train. Only one person had access to take these photos. Only one person had been in the right position at the right time to capture me in these exact moments of vulnerability. My wife. The woman who shared my bed every night had been secretly documenting my most unflattering moments and using them to create what could only be described as a worst husband ever dating profile. But why? Was she planning to leave me? Was this some kind of elaborate prank? Or worse, was she trying to set me up somehow? I decided not to confront her immediately. Instead, I did something that would change everything. I took control of the profile. First, I changed the password using the forgot password feature since I knew her email habits. Then I replaced those horrible photos with some recent ones that actually showed me at my best. A picture from my friend's wedding where I cleaned up nicely in a suit. Another from our last vacation where I was actually smiling and looked relaxed and confident. A third one from the gym where I was mid-workout and looked focused and determined. I rewrote the bio too. Straightforward guy who values honesty and genuine connections. Looking for someone who appreciates loyalty and authentic conversations. Within hours, the messages started pouring in. Real messages from real women who seemed genuinely interested in conversation. Not the fake or bot messages that usually flood these apps, but actual thoughtful responses to the profile. Meanwhile, my wife was acting completely normal at home. She made dinner. We watched Netflix. She kissed me goodnight. Not a single hint that she had just spent time creating an online dating profile designed to humiliate me. The level of deception was almost impressive if it wasn't so disturbing. Over the next few days, I watched her carefully. She would glance at her phone, smile slightly, then look at me with this odd expression, like she was waiting for something, like she expected me to do something specific. That's when I realized what this was really about. This wasn't just about proving I was replaceable. This was about creating a trap. She wanted me to use the profile, to respond to messages, to maybe even meet someone. Then she could point to my cheating as justification for whatever she was planning next. But here's what she didn't count on. I'm not the same guy who used to let her little games slide. Years of subtle put-downs, constant criticism about my appearance, my job, my hobbies, my friends. All of it had been building up. Comments like, "You're lucky I stay with you, and no one else would put up with this," had become her daily routine. This dating profile stunt wasn't the beginning of her disrespect. It was just the most creative example yet. So I decided to play her game, but by my rules. I started responding to the messages on the app, having genuine conversations with interesting people. Not flirting, not being inappropriate, just talking like a normal human being who wasn't constantly being told he wasn't good enough. And you know what I discovered? I'm actually pretty good at conversation when I'm not walking around my own house feeling like I need to apologize for existing. The women messaging me seemed to think I was funny, intelligent, and worth their time. What a concept. My wife's behavior became even more interesting. She started checking her phone more frequently, and I could tell she was monitoring the profile somehow, probably expecting to catch me red-handed any day now. The anticipation in her eyes was almost amusing. After about a week of this, I decided it was time to escalate things. I arranged to meet one of the women who had been messaging me. Nothing romantic, Just coffee and conversation with someone who treated me like a human being rather than a disappointing roommate. I made sure to leave my phone unlocked on the kitchen counter while I showered, knowing my wife's nosiness would kick in. Sure enough, when I came downstairs, she had that look. The look of someone who had just discovered exactly what she was hoping to find. "Going somewhere special tonight?" she asked with fake casualness. "Just meeting a friend for coffee," I replied, straightening my shirt. "Anyone I know?" "Nope." I grabbed my keys and headed for the door, feeling her eyes burning into my back. As I reached the doorway, I turned around and gave her my best smile. "Don't wait up." The coffee shop was busy for a Thursday evening. I arrived 15 minutes early and chose a table near the window where I could see the parking lot. Call it paranoia, but I had a feeling I wouldn't be dining alone tonight. Not because of my date, but because of my shadow. She showed up right on time. Professional looking, confident smile, and she actually seemed happy to see me. When was the last time someone looked genuinely pleased to be in my presence? I couldn't remember. "You look exactly like your photos," she said, settling into her chair. "That's refreshing these days." "Well, I recently updated them," I replied with a slight grin. Figured it was time for a more accurate representation. We ordered coffee and started talking. Real conversation about books, travel, work, life goals. She was intelligent, funny, and best of all, she wasn't analyzing every word I said for hidden flaws. No eye rolling, no sighing, no subtle hints that I was disappointing her just by breathing. About 20 minutes into our conversation, I spotted a familiar car parked across the street. My wife's white Honda, with her distinctive bumper sticker collection still visible even in the evening light. She was sitting in the driver's seat, phone in hand, probably taking photos through the coffee shop window. "This is going to sound strange," I said to my date, "but see that white Honda across the street? That's my wife." Her coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. "Your wife?" "Let me explain. A couple weeks ago, I found a dating profile online with my pictures on it. Terrible pictures that made me look like a complete loser. Pictures I never posed for or approved. It took me about 2 seconds to figure out who had created it." "She made a fake dating profile of you?" "Exactly. But here's the interesting part. She used the worst possible photos she could find. Me sleeping with my mouth open, me lounging around looking like a slob, me bent over fixing appliances. Real attractive stuff." She leaned forward, clearly intrigued. "Why would she do that?" "I think she wanted to prove that I'm so unattractive and replaceable that no decent woman would be interested in me. Like some kind of twisted social experiment to confirm her daily commentary about how lucky I am that she puts up with me. That's..." She paused, searching for words. "That's actually kind of psychotic. Right? But here's where it gets interesting. Instead of confronting her about it, I decided to play along. I updated the profile with better photos and started having actual conversations with people. Like this one." She glanced toward the window where my wife's car was still parked. "So she's out there right now thinking she's caught you cheating? Probably taking photos for her divorce lawyer as we speak. Except we're just having coffee and talking. Nothing inappropriate happening here. This is unreal. Does she know that you know she created the profile?" "Not yet, but I'm planning to share that little detail soon. See, I think this whole thing was meant to be a trap. She creates the profile expecting me to use it inappropriately. Then she catches me, and suddenly I'm the bad guy in the divorce. Perfect plan, except for one problem." "What's that?" "I'm not actually doing anything wrong. Having coffee with someone isn't cheating. Having a normal conversation with a person who treats me with basic respect isn't a crime. But her sitting out there stalking me and taking secret photos? That's a whole different story." My date shook her head in amazement. "How long have you been married?" 8 years. And for about 6 of those years, she's been systematically tearing down my confidence with little comments about my appearance, my job, my friends, everything really. This dating profile thing isn't the start of her disrespect. It's just the most creative example yet. So what are you going to do? I'm going to let her collect all the evidence she wants from tonight. Then I'm going to show her exactly what real evidence looks like. Screenshots of the original profile she created, documentation of her creating fake accounts, proof that she's been secretly photographing me for months. When this is all over, she's going to wish she'd just asked for a divorce honestly instead of trying to manipulate the situation. We continued talking for another hour. She told me about her job as a marketing coordinator, her weekend hiking trips, Her book club that actually sounded fun, unlike my wife's group that seemed to exist solely for complaining about husbands. It was refreshing to have a conversation that didn't involve someone pointing out my shortcomings every 5 minutes. When we were getting ready to leave, I glanced outside again. My wife's car was still there, now with the interior light on. She was definitely working on something. Probably uploading photos and crafting her victim narrative for tomorrow's confrontation. Thank you for tonight, my date said as we walked toward the parking lot. This was definitely the most interesting coffee I've had in a while. Thank you for understanding the situation. Not everyone would be so cool about accidentally being part of someone else's marriage drama. Are you going to be okay? This sounds like a pretty toxic situation. I'm going to be better than okay. For the first time in years, I'm thinking clearly about what I actually want and what I'm willing to tolerate. Tonight has been very educational. As I walked to my car, I could feel my wife's eyes following my every move. I waved cheerfully in the direction of her Honda before getting in and driving home. Let her sit there and process whatever story she was planning to tell. By the time I was done with my response, her narrative was going to fall apart completely. I drove home knowing that tomorrow would bring the confrontation she'd been building toward. But what she didn't realize was that I'd been building towards something too. Something that would end this ridiculous situation once and for all. The next morning came with the performance I'd been expecting. My wife was practically vibrating with anticipation as she made coffee, stealing glances at me every few seconds like she was waiting for the perfect moment to drop her bombshell. "Sleep well?" she asked with fake sweetness. "Like a baby," I replied, not looking up from my phone. She waited another minute before striking. "So, how was your coffee last night?" "Good coffee. Good conversation. Thanks for asking. Anyone interesting?" I finally looked up at her, and I could see she was practically bursting to reveal her big discovery. "Very interesting, actually. Smart, well-read, treats people with respect. You know, basic human decency stuff." Her face flushed slightly. "That's nice. I'm sure she was impressed with you." The way she said impressed made it clear she thought the exact opposite. Time to start laying my groundwork. Actually, she was. Funny how different people can have completely different perspectives on the same person, right? Some people see potential, others just see problems. While she processed that comment, I excused myself to my home office. I had work to do, and not the kind she was expecting. Over the next few hours, I systematically documented everything. Screenshots of the original dating profile with those awful photos. Screenshots showing the creation date and the email address used to set it up. Her email address that she thought I didn't know the password to. Photos of her taking photos of me without my knowledge over the past few months, saved in her cloud storage that we shared. But the real gold mine was her text message history with her sister. Apparently, she'd been sharing her brilliant plan for weeks. Messages like, "I created the perfect trap," and "When he takes the bait, I'll have everything I need for the divorce," and my personal favorite. Those photos make him look pathetic. No woman would want him. I also found evidence of her monitoring the dating profile activity. She'd been tracking every message, every interaction, waiting for me to slip up so she could play the victim card. The irony was beautiful. While she was building her case against me, she was actually building my case against her. Creating fake profiles, unauthorized use of my photos, stalking, invasion of privacy. The list was getting impressive. Around noon, she appeared in my office doorway with lunch and that same expectant expression. "I made you a sandwich," she said, setting the plate down. "Thanks. That's thoughtful. We should probably talk later." "About last night?" "Sure. I'm actually looking forward to that conversation." She clearly wasn't expecting that response. Her smile faltered for just a second before she recovered. "Good. I think it's time we were honest with each other about where this marriage is heading." I couldn't agree more. Complete honesty sounds perfect. After she left, I continued my preparation. I printed everything. Every screenshot, every message, every piece of evidence of her elaborate setup. I organized it all into a folder that would make any lawyer proud. Then I did something she would never expect. I called a lawyer myself, not for divorce proceedings, but to understand exactly what legal line she had crossed with her little scheme. Unauthorized use of photographs, creating fake profiles, stalking, harassment. Turns out my wife had been busier than I thought. That evening, she could barely contain herself through dinner. She kept checking her phone, probably reviewing her photos from last night and rehearsing her big confrontation speech. "So, she finally said as we finished eating. I think we need to discuss what happened last night. Absolutely. I've been thinking about it all day. She took a deep breath, clearly ready to deliver her prepared statement. I know about your date. I know you've been using dating apps behind my back. I have proof of everything. I nodded thoughtfully. That's interesting. Tell me more about this proof. I followed you last night. I saw you with that woman. I took pictures. I have evidence of you cheating on me. Having coffee and conversation is cheating now. Don't play dumb. You're on dating sites meeting other women. That's cheating. You're right. Someone has been on dating sites. Someone did create a profile and arrange meetings. Someone has definitely been deceptive in this marriage. I stood up and walked to my office, returning with the folder I'd prepared. Let's talk about that. I opened the folder and spread the first set of screenshots on the dining table. Her face went white as she recognized the original profile she'd created. This is you creating a fake dating profile using my photos. Photos you took without my permission while I was sleeping, relaxing, or doing household repairs. Photos specifically chosen to make me look as unattractive as possible. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. These are your text messages to your sister, discussing your plan to trap me and collect evidence for a divorce. And this, I said, placing another set of papers on the table, is documentation of you stalking me last night and taking unauthorized photographs. She stared at the evidence, her master plan crumbling in real time. Now, I continued, sitting back down. Let's talk about who's really been deceptive in this marriage and who's really been planning a divorce. The silence that followed was deafening. My wife sat there staring at the evidence spread across our dining table like she was looking at alien hieroglyphics. Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. I can explain, she finally whispered. Please do. I'm genuinely curious to hear how you explain creating fake profiles, unauthorized photography, stalking, and planning to frame me for infidelity. She looked around the room like she was searching for an escape route. It wasn't supposed to go this far. I wanted to see if you would actually what? Use the profile you created specifically to trap me? Congratulations, mission accomplished. Except you forgot one tiny detail. What? I never did anything wrong. Having coffee with someone isn't cheating. Having a normal conversation isn't adultery. But what you did, creating fake accounts, using my photos without permission, stalking me, planning to manipulate divorce proceedings, that's a whole different category of behavior. She reached for the papers, probably hoping to hide the evidence somehow. I gently moved them out of her reach. These are copies. The originals are somewhere safe. You can't do this to me. Do what? Present facts? Tell the truth? Use actual evidence instead of manufactured drama. Her shock was rapidly turning into anger. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won something here. I think I've learned something important about the person I married. And I think you've shown me exactly what kind of future we'd have together. She stood up abruptly, knocking her chair backward. This is ridiculous. So what if I created a stupid profile? So what if I followed you one night? You're my husband. I have a right to know what you're doing. Actually, you don't have the right to stalk me, photograph me without consent, or create fake online personas using my identity. Those are called crimes in most places. You're being dramatic. Am I? Let me read you something. I picked up one of her text messages to her sister. Quote, those photos make him look pathetic. No woman would want him. When he takes the bait, I'll have everything I need for the divorce. End quote. Does that sound like the behavior of a loving wife concerned about her marriage? Her face flushed red. You had no right to read my private messages. You mean the messages on our shared cloud account? The account you used to store the unauthorized photos you took of me? Those private messages. She was spiraling now, grasping for any argument that might stick. This is all your fault anyway. If you were a better husband, I wouldn't have needed to do any of this. There it is. The real truth. After 8 years of your constant criticism, your daily reminders of how lucky I am that you tolerate me, your systematic destruction of my confidence, you finally admitted what this is really about. I never said those things. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling. Would you like me to play some recordings? Turns out phones are great for documenting patterns of verbal abuse too. Her eyes widened. She hadn't realized I'd been keeping track of her daily put-downs and insults. You recorded me? I documented my life. Just like you were documenting yours. Except I was honest about it. She slumped back into her chair, the fight draining out of her. What do you want? I want you to understand that your little game is over. No more manipulation, no more schemes, no more trying to control the narrative. If you want a divorce, we can discuss that like adults. But this psychological warfare ends now. And if I don't agree, I gestured to the evidence on the table. Then we let a judge decide who's been the problematic spouse in this marriage. I'm sure they'll be very interested in your creative approach to marriage counseling. She stared at the papers for a long moment, probably calculating her options and realizing she didn't have any good ones. I didn't mean for it to go this far, she said quietly. But you didn't mean to humiliate me. You didn't mean to set me up. You didn't mean to collect false evidence to use against me. The only thing you didn't mean was to get caught. So what now? Now you get to decide how this ends. We can handle this privately and amicably, or we can let lawyers and judges sort through your schemes. But either way, the version where you play victim and I play villain, that story is over. She looked up at me with something that might have been respect for the first time in years. Or maybe it was just fear. Either way, it was a significant improvement over the contempt I'd grown accustomed to. I need time to think. Take all the time you need. But while you're thinking, remember that I have copies of everything. Every message, every photo, every piece of evidence of what you've been planning. Make your decisions accordingly. She nodded slowly and headed upstairs without another word. As I sat there looking at the scattered evidence of her elaborate deception, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Relief. For the first time in our marriage, I was the one holding all the cards. 3 days passed in complete silence. My wife moved through the house like a ghost, avoiding eye contact and speaking only when absolutely necessary. I could practically hear the wheels turning in her head as she tried to figure out an exit strategy that didn't leave her looking like the villain in this story. On Saturday morning, she finally broke. "I've been thinking about what you said," she announced over breakfast, her voice careful and measured. "And maybe we should consider counseling. Work through our issues together." I almost choked on my coffee. After everything she'd done, she was still trying to manipulate the situation. Counseling to work through which issues exactly? Your stalking hobby? Your fake profile creation skills? Your talent for secretly photographing people? Our marriage issues? The problems we've both contributed to? Both contributed to, I repeated slowly. That's interesting phrasing. She shifted uncomfortably. I'm willing to admit I made some mistakes. Some mistakes, like creating multiple felonies, was just an oopsie moment. Her carefully constructed composure cracked slightly. Fine. I screwed up, okay? But you're not innocent either. You went on that date. You talked to other women. After you created a fake profile specifically designed to make that happen. After you set up an elaborate trap. After you spent months planning this whole scenario. But sure, let's focus on me having coffee with someone. She stood up abruptly and started pacing. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You twist everything to make me look bad. I don't need to twist anything. The evidence speaks for itself. Evidence, evidence, evidence. That's all you care about now. What happened to forgiveness? What happened to working through problems together? I leaned back in my chair, studying her. You want to know what happened to working through problems together? It died somewhere around year 3 when you decided I was the problem that needed to be managed rather than the partner you chose to build a life with. That's not fair. You spent 5 years systematically tearing down my confidence, and then created an elaborate scheme to prove I was worthless. But I'm the one being unfair. She stopped pacing and turned to face me. So that's it. You're just going to throw away 8 years of marriage. I'm not throwing anything away. You threw it away when you decided manipulation was more appealing than communication. People make mistakes. People deserve second chances. This wasn't a mistake. This was a calculated, planned campaign that took months to execute. You researched dating apps. You strategically photographed me at my worst moments. You created fake accounts. You coordinated with your sister. You monitored my activity. You stalked me. That's not a mistake. That's a lifestyle choice. Her eyes filled with tears, but they looked more like frustration than genuine remorse. So what do you want from me? You want me to beg? You want me to grovel? I want you to be honest. For once in this conversation, just tell the truth about what you were really trying to accomplish. She was quiet for a long moment, and I could see her internal struggle. Part of her wanted to keep playing victim, but part of her knew that game was over. I wanted proof that you didn't deserve me, she finally admitted. I wanted to confirm that I was settling for someone beneath my league. There it is. Thank you for the honesty. But I was wrong, she added quickly. I see that now. No, you're not wrong about us being incompatible. You're just wrong about who's settling for whom. That hit harder than she expected. Her tears stopped and her expression hardened. What's that supposed to mean? It means I spent 8 years trying to be good enough for someone who was never going to think I was good enough, no matter what I did. You didn't create that dating profile to test me. You created it to confirm what you already believed. And what's that? That you're too good for me. That I'm lucky to have you. That any woman who shows interest in me must be desperate or damaged. I stood up and walked to the window. You know what I learned from that coffee date? I learned what it feels like to have a conversation with someone who doesn't spend the entire time cataloging my flaws. One conversation with a stranger doesn't mean anything. You're right. One conversation doesn't mean anything. But 8 years of feeling like I need to apologize for existing in my own house. That means everything. She stood there processing this, probably realizing that her reconciliation strategy wasn't working. So this is really it. You're really going to divorce me over this. I'm going to divorce you because this marriage has been over for years, and your little scheme just made it impossible to pretend otherwise. Fine, she said, her voice turning cold. But don't think this is going to be easy for you. I have rights too. I turned back to face her, and for the first time in this entire conversation, I smiled. Yes, you do have rights. And I have evidence. Let's see which one carries more weight in court. 6 months later, I was sitting in my lawyer's office signing the final divorce papers. The whole process had been surprisingly straightforward once my wife realized that her evidence folder was significantly thinner than mine. Her attorney had tried the standard approaches: emotional distress, alienation of affection, mental cruelty. But every accusation fell apart when confronted with documented proof of her systematic deception and manipulation. Hard to claim emotional distress when you're the one who created fake profiles and stalked your spouse. The settlement was exactly what I'd expected. Fair division of assets, no alimony in either direction, and a very clear agreement that she would not discuss the circumstances of our divorce publicly or on social media. Her reputation as a marketing professional couldn't survive the story of her elaborate catfishing scheme becoming public knowledge. My lawyer looked up from the papers. That's everything. You're officially a free man. Thank you. I appreciate you handling this so efficiently. To be honest, I've never seen a case where one party documented their own misconduct so thoroughly. Those text messages to her sister were particularly helpful. As I walked out of the law office, I thought about how different my life had become. The house felt peaceful now without the constant undercurrent of criticism and judgment. I'd started going to the gym regularly, not because anyone told me I needed to improve myself, but because I actually enjoyed it. My confidence had returned gradually, like a muscle memory I'd forgotten I possessed. The dating app incident had taught me something valuable, not about dating or relationships, but about self-respect. For years, I'd accepted my wife's assessment of my worth as gospel truth. Her scheme had accidentally shown me what I looked like through someone else's eyes. Someone who didn't have a vested interest in keeping me feeling small. I'd had a few more coffee dates since then. Nothing serious, just conversations with interesting people who treated me like a human being worth knowing. It was remarkable how much more attractive you become when you stop apologizing for existing. The woman from that first coffee date had become a friend. She'd been fascinated by the whole story and occasionally checked in to see how I was handling the divorce proceedings. You know, she told me recently, most people would have confronted their spouse immediately after finding that profile. The fact that you turned it into a learning experience shows real emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, not words I'd heard applied to myself in quite a while. 3 weeks after the divorce was finalized, I ran into my ex-wife at Target. She was with a man I didn't recognize, and she looked different somehow. Smaller, less sure of herself. When she spotted me in the electronics section, her first instinct was to turn around and leave, but her companion had already seen me and was walking over. "You must be the ex-husband," he said with a friendly smile, extending his hand. "I've heard a lot about you." I shook his hand, curious about what version of our story she'd shared. "All good things, I hope." My ex-wife appeared beside him looking mortified. "We should go," she said quickly. Actually, her new boyfriend continued. "She told me about the whole dating profile thing. That was pretty clever how you handled that situation." I glanced at my ex-wife, whose face had gone completely white. Apparently, her new relationship was built on a more honest foundation than our marriage had been. It was educational. I replied diplomatically. Well, you certainly came out ahead. Good for you for not letting someone walk all over you like that. As they walked away, I heard my ex-wife hissing something about oversharing and inappropriate topics. Some things never change. Later that evening, I was at home watching Sunday Night Football with a beer and my phone nearby, responding to messages from friends who wanted to grab dinner or catch a movie. The couch where she'd secretly photographed me looking slovenly was now just a comfortable place to relax, not a crime scene for evidence collection. The whole experience had taught me that respect isn't something you can demand or manipulate into existence. It's something you earn by respecting yourself first. My ex-wife had spent years trying to prove I wasn't worth her time, and ironically, she'd succeeded in proving that she wasn't worth mine. The funny part was, she'd been right about one thing. I was replaceable in her life, but she'd been wrong about everything else. I wasn't desperately lucky to have someone settle for me. I wasn't pathetic or unattractive or unworthy of genuine affection. I was just someone who'd forgotten his own value for a while. And thanks to her elaborate scheme to prove my worthlessness, I'd remembered exactly who I was when someone wasn't constantly telling me who I wasn't. The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd created that dating profile to prove how replaceable I was, and all she'd proven was how replaceable she was. Turns out, when you spend years making someone feel small, they eventually realize they can feel much bigger without you. My phone buzzed with a text from a colleague asking if I wanted to join their club. The same colleague who'd mentioned last week that his sister had enjoyed our conversation at the company barbecue and wondered if I was single. I smiled and typed back, absolutely. What are we reading this month? Life after marriage was turning out to be exactly what I'd hoped it would be. Peaceful, honest, and full of people who were genuinely happy to see me walk into a room. Some replacements, it turns out, are significant improvements.
Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.